Hello and welcome to Spooning with me, Mark Wogan. Now, each week I am joined by a very special guest and I will cook them some food that they think they love and some food that they think they hate, and I'll be blindfolding them. This week we are at my home slice restaurant in London's City, and I've been cooking up a few things for my very special guest. But who is my special guest? He is the king of the panel show. He has toured many, many times to packed houses, and he's Irish, so he's already winning as far as I'm concerned. Will you please welcome Ed Byrne?
Hello, thank you. How are you? Hello. Yes.
You all right?
Yeah, great.
We will start at the beginning.
Right.
Now, as I mentioned, you are Irish.
Yes.
Which makes you the chosen people.
Yes.
And you were born in Swords.
Yeah.
Which
Well, I spent the first 3 months of my life in a town called Navan,
yeah,
which is where Tommy Tiernan and Dylan Moran both grew up.
Navan man.
Yeah, and they both won the Perrier Award. I only spent 3 months there, which meant that's enough to get yourself a nomination for the Perrier
Yeah,
Award.
because we'll touch on that later. But what I liked reading through was a similarity you share with my father, which was being educated by the Christian,
Yeah.
which also made him an atheist.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even to say I was educated is probably a stretch. But my last 2 years of schooling, I went to the local comprehensive because the Christian Brothers school I was in was just in a nosedive. It was actually the first Christian Brothers school in Ireland to be given a head teacher who was not a Christian brother.
Which is probably a good thing.
Obviously they thought something had to be like, well, that's the Christian Brothers equivalent of special measures.
But my dad always just described them as brutal sadists.
Michael Smiley, I think he referred to them as the paramilitary wing of the Catholic Church.
I mean, Torquemada would have admired some of their teaching methods. But I think, because he always said, he was a good student, but still somehow he got a strap across the hand every morning and every evening.
The thing I remember was that you expected from your classmates that they would hate you if you were a SWAT.
Mm-hmm.
You don't expect it from your teachers.
I never suffered that.
Our teachers.
I never suffered that.
I was quite interested in science. I quite enjoyed science, but our science teacher was and he hated you.
In the name of the God.
What?
Yeah. In the name of the Lord.
Well, no, he wasn't a Christian brother either.
Oh, really?
He was a lay person, but he was, and he was just, and he also, if you couldn't play Gaelic football or hurling, if you weren't good at either of those sports, they also didn't like you.
No.
So you're fair enough if your sports teacher didn't like you, but your accountancy teacher wouldn't like you and wouldn't want to teach you because you're bad at sport. That was my memory of.
People complain about the state of education today, particularly in this country. But I mean, compared to what? Because I mean, I'm what am I now? 54, nearly 55. Educators in my day were lunatics and drunks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember our English teacher went to watch the Pope land at Heathrow Airport,
Right.
and turned up because I was at a Catholic school as well, and turned up at assembly to tell us all about it, blind drunk.
Wow.
And had to be escorted off the stage. He was so overwhelmed by the whole thing, he thought, better drink a bottle of scotch on the way back to school.
This is like that guy describing the scene of the whole fleet is lit up like fairy lamps.
But you have kind of taken quite an anti-Catholic church stance. Would it be fair to say?
I've probably softened a bit since I first got into it. But yeah, I was one of those, I think when Richard Dawkins was first becoming a name about 20 years ago, and the whole concept of militant atheism was beginning to come through, I did kind of join that clan.
Well, there's nothing like a Catholic upbringing to instill that in you, I think.
Yeah. I think what also kind of got me, the reason and people do ask this question of why do atheists feel they need to organize? Stuff like that. So, the reason I didn't like the church is because I don't like organization and all that kind of. And it's because I felt a certain resentment, actually. Partly because I felt really hoodwinked. It annoyed me because I did believe quite fervently until I was probably about 13 or 14. And I kind of feel that...
You, like me, you were an altar boy.
I was an altar boy, yeah. I look back on the amount of time I dedicated to this thing, that ultimately, even the people who were teaching it to you didn't really believe it. You know, like
We're using it as a way of...
Sure. Well, I'll admit, as awful as some of my schooling was, I never saw it wielded as that kind of a weapon. I never witnessed that kind of abuse,
neither did
to be
I.
fair. But no, it was just it annoyed me that the same person who told you that the capital of France is Paris and that this is how you conjugate this verb, that same person was telling me that Jesus did this and that, and it's. And even they, you know, may not have believed it themselves. And I just really resented it. And I just felt like that's not, it should be a completely optional thing that should be taken out of schools. And that was what, and I just felt, I felt cheated about the amount of time that was wasted. That I should have been learning science or even, or skills like how to wire a plug.
You wanted to be a scientist, but ended up a horticulturist, didn't you?
Well, horticulture is a science. It was a BS.
I'm not denigrating the art of horticulture.
I fancied getting a degree, but I did drop out of university, to be fair.
Yeah. And became an events officer.
I was the entertainment guy at the students' union.
Which was your first sort of entree into the world of comedy, wasn't it? Because you put on a comedy night and had to MC it. Is that?
No. Well, I used to host the karaoke's and pub quizzes and things like that. But then through the context I garnered through doing that, I was able to I set up a comedy club after I dropped out. I set up a comedy night in a pub I used to drink in Glasgow, and then I AMC'd.
Yeah, because you studied in Glasgow.
Yeah.
It's not in Ireland.
No, Strathclyde Uni in Glasgow. Because at the time it was fairly a financial decision, but at the time, fees in Ireland, you had to pay your own university fees.
Who would do that?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas if you're from one EU country and you go to university in another EU country, your fees were paid by a thing called the European Social Fund. That presumably is no longer the case if you go from Ireland to the UK. Anyway,
No, I don't.
that
I think
used to be the case.
left.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that will have been kiboshed.
Now, turning to food.
Yeah.
You are a man who does love his food.
Yeah, I probably don't look it, but I do.
No. But we share a mutual love of our smokers.
Yeah. Have you got a barrel smoker?
I've got a barrel smoker. I've got I'm slightly obsessive, so I've got a whole sort of ant stall kitchen thing that.
Have you got one of those big eggs?
I don't like them.
See, everyone I know's got one of those big eggs, and I don't see why. I don't see what's so
They're
bad.
they're an absolute pain in the arse to light,
Yeah.
and then a pain in the arse to control. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
most
would've
people
thought.
who've got an egg burn stuff for you.
Right.
Or undercook it. One or the other. It's like it's been in there for 12 hours.
Hi.
Might want to give it another 12. But that kind of, there's something. I don't know about you, but when I fire up the smoker and I do all of that, I just escape into that.
No.
And it just, it's a lovely process. And that whole thing of something that can take anything up to 3 days to come to fruition. You're very proud of your ribs, aren't you?
Yeah, I think my greatest.
Your ribs.
No. But my greatest failures and triumphs have been ribs in that smoker. Yeah. I think the worst is when I've over seasoned in the past and slightly ruined them.
Still eaten though.
Well, I had to run them under a tap first and then put them back in.
Wash the salt out.
Literally, yeah. I seasoned them as if I was seasoning them like a brisket.
Right.
And then they were just way too salty.
You gotta be careful. But but that style of cooking is my favourite style of cooking.
And it's one of those ones where you can be as an active a participant in it as you want.
Yes.
You can just leave it going and take it, or you can just keep making sure the temperature remains exactly the same and controlling the vent
In little thermometers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it depends on who's over.
Now,
Really.
Are you a Texas crutch man or not?
Now, what's exactly is the Texas?
So that's
crust?
where you wrap it in butcher paper, then foil, and give it another. They call it the Texas.
Is that called the Texas crutch when you seal it towards the end?
Yeah, just seal it towards the end and give it another couple of hours wrapped up. Right. You either pour beer or cider or cider vinegar or syrup, whatever over it. and stick it.
I have done it that way. It's not something I do
See, I
regularly.
like that.
But
And then you take it out, then you coat it, and then seal the barbecue sauce on the end.
yeah. But
it's
why
all
when
the
people
stages
when people who
are-
call it the Texas Crunch are they barbecues
they're
now?
from
Do you feel
Texas.
that you should not do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are two schools of thought.
It sounds like the sort of thing somebody who's not from Texas would say about people from Texas.
Yeah, they're basically denigrating Texans.
Right.
They can't manage it. They have to wrap it. But it is a great love of mine. But we're going to go back to your early years.
Yeah, okay.
And I have attempted to recreate something that is no longer available that you loved as a child, which is
Not saucy sponge.
saucy sponge. Now, this is my attempt at saucy sponge.
So
yeah?
this is dessert first.
Yeah, well, you know, we don't follow any rules here, but I've got some ice cream for you there, and that is the saucy sponge. So dig in and see whether there's a bowl for you to put it into. Now, how are you feeling about the
But
texture?
already, it doesn't have it's not got much of a crust.
Well, that's because I had to wrap it in tin foil and reheat it in the wood-fired oven over there, and it peeled the top off.
Yeah, no, but the crust, I mean, is more like a hard.
everyone's a critic.
No, I'm just telling you from what I remember, because saucy sponge, it probably wasn't supposed to have such a crust. It was the way my mother would do it. So it would be hard, like it would almost, because the sugar would crystallize on top of it.
Well, because the way it worked was, and I remember the saucy sponge was a particularly Irish thing.
Was it?
Yeah, it was made by McDougall's.
Okay.
Now, look, the sauce is at the
The
bottom.
sauce is at the bottom.
Yeah.
And was the sauce on top, and did the sponge rise through the
No,
sauce?
I cheated. I put the sauce at the bottom first, because it was such a wonder of science.
Yeah.
That as an actual dish, because the way you did it was you mixed the sponge up, then you poured the sauce over the top.
Yeah.
Put it in the oven, and magically, then the sauce would end up on the bottom.
Yeah, the sponge rose through the sauce, and then the sauce sort of imbued into the sponge. And then because of that...
Would you like a little ice cream? Would you like a little ice cream with
Yeah.
that? There we go.
Go on,
There's a
then.
little ice cream with that. There you go. Tell me how your saucy sponge is. Here, I've got a napkin for you there. Is it bringing back any childhood memories? That's what I want to know.
I mean, it's a tasty dish.
It's a tasty dish, but you're saying it's no saucy sponge. Is that what you're saying? It's maybe a little bit too refined. Because I made that with proper chocolate, that sauce at the bottom.
I'm not getting any E numbers.
No.
I'm not getting...
No, there is a lack of that because
cocktail that was saucy
I use
sponge.
things like flour
Yeah.
and eggs and cocoa powder
No.
as opposed to emulsifiers.
No.
and
What kind of
fancy
packets will this stuff come out of?
proper ones.
Proper like jars and paper.
Yeah,
No. It's supposed to be
kiln
like
jars,
a
like
paper,
very organised.
plastic coated paper thing, and it's got to look like it's come straight out of a lab.
No, the packaging has to be terrible for the environment, and then the contents have to be terrible for you. But it does. But I remember it as a kid.
Yeah. Do you have any idea what happened to it? I have a sense that it was taken off the market because it was basically poison.
Yes, I would. But I only ever had it in Ireland as a kid.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there's very few people seem to know about it, so maybe it was. But I just remember the ad for it being English. I just don't remember it being an Irish commercial.
Well, I mean, it was
not.
it was made by McDougall's. They went on to be quite successful in flour.
Okay, and they were an Irish company, really?
No,
They're Northern Irish.
Scottish.
company.
Scottish,
right?
maybe.
Okay.
Some of our listeners or viewers will be able to instruct us as to who owns.
But if you the ad is about, you can watch the ad on YouTube, and it shows the kind of the process of the chemicals sponge rising through. Yeah.
Now, the other thing that you have a bit of a history with,
Yeah.
which was now where have I put it? I think I've got it here. Yes, I have. Talk us through.
This isn't coddle, is it?
This.
No. Is that a steak pie?
That is a steak pie. Do tell the people at home your history with a steak.
Now, is this regards a story I told when I was on
Would I lie to you? Yes.
It's so funny. I was just doing a radio show called The Good, the Bad, and the Unexpected on BBC Scotland, and they brought this up as well.
Well, I like a pie. It's good.
Yeah, no, I was sitting on the underground in Glasgow one morning, having been at a sort of a party the night before, and I suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable. And I just reached down and I just pulled out a bit of pie crust. And what's funny is I realized straight away what happened. I was, oh, there's a pie down my trousers. And there was no great
Roughly how old were you at this?
19.
Okay, so yeah, you
Yeah, 19.
hadn't quite reached maturity.
No. Have I had 52?
Now, going back, do we know why the pie was in your trousers?
I fell asleep amongst other students. That was about the size of it. Now I do look back on that night and go, was I annoying? Maybe. Like I actually don't know whether it was.
Or did you just pass out in the wrong company?
Yeah. I bear them no ill will.
Yeah.
Because either they just said, well, he's asleep. There's a pie. That's going down his pants.
Yeah.
Or was there a slightly more, well, he's been very annoying. He deserves this. Either way.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with what happened.
The worst thing of that kind of behaviour I ever experienced, but not directly, was somebody passed out in the wrong company, and somebody wrote an appalling 4-letter word
On their face?
On their face.
Yeah.
In pen.
Right.
Begins with a C, ends with
Okay.
a T.
Radio.
And unfortunately, they were so drunk they didn't realise what they'd drawn it on with was a wart pen.
A what pen?
A wart pen. You know those pens that...
Oh, right, that you used to get rid of warts. Okay.
Yeah. Scarred their forehead.
Wow.
Yeah. They've got it on there forever.
Wow.
I mean, hopefully that person didn't suffer from male pattern baldness and has been able to retain a fringe, because it's on
their forehead.
But those
Surely
appalling
you can
things.
get that removed chemically, or at least, you know,
I'm sure they can laser it off now.
Do your whole forehead in wart.
But I mean, this guy had it on his forehead.
Yeah. I mean, drawing on people's faces is certainly,
Yeah.
I
I mean, lots of people became mice when drunk.
Yeah.
Or cats. You know, that was a big thing. But it is something that is particular to youth. I think if you're still doing that in your 30s, you maybe need to talk to somebody.
I think, to be honest with you, you reach a point in life where passing out or falling asleep in mixed company isn't really the done thing either.
No.
I'm trying to think of any situations where my wife would be happy with me if the next day she went, you fell asleep at that party. I think, no, I can't think of.
I can do that through work. I mean, I have been known when, I've arrived home, sat on the sofa, and Susan is there, and we're chatting about our days, and I've fallen asleep while she's been talking.
Right.
And that doesn't go down well.
It doesn't.
Because you are there to listen. You have to listen. And if you don't, there's a bill to pay.
It's not really, it's very rare that you can get away with, I was able to fall asleep next to you as a compliment. I mean, you could say that I'm so at ease in your company is probably the best line you could throw out.
But it's not going to wear it. They're not going to wear it. They're not going to wear it. So you've got this steak pie here. Do you have a kind of phobia of steak pies as a result of it, or you're quite happy to eat
say, it was one of those moments where I was like, this is all par for the course.
Yeah.
I am a student. I fell asleep at a party. A Scotch pie was there. I mean, what else was going to happen? No. So none of it is. And I think to me, that's what I found most amusing looking back on it, was that I straight away there was no kind of, oh my God, am I exploding from inside? Have I soiled myself? It was just straight away. Someone's put pie down my pants.
But when you talked about it on Would I Lie to You,
Yeah.
did they think you were lying?
God, I don't even remember now. Jeez, that's the kind of detail. I rarely watch myself back.
Well, I mean, it's an awful thing to
Yeah.
do, isn't it? Suddenly ever watched an episode of this. It'd be terrible. So let's talk about your career. So you start off as an MC.
Yeah.
And then you get your...
Did that for a couple of months.
Did that for a couple of months. But then you kind of transferred to Australia. So...
Well, I moved to London.
Yeah, I moved to London.
That's what one has. At the time, that was what you just had to do. Like, even the reason I ran a comedy club in Glasgow was because it was, at the time, there was nowhere else to play.
Yeah.
There
But you
to
had
play.
decided quite a long time prior to that that's what you wanted to do.
Well, I kind of wanted to go in. I actually thought, believe it or not, I thought I'd be a TV presenter. Right? I actually thought stand-up comedy would be too hard.
It is.
And it turns out I'm better at that than I am at TV presenting. I've done only a little bit of TV presenting, but to only a small degree of success. So, but I did. I fancied that first. But again, and you may have come from the same kind of thing. I had very much instilled in me from a young age that you needed to have a trade to fall back on. And so the idea of going to university to study drama or TV production or communications even, or anything like that, that's not real.
Well, growing up in the family I grew up in, I was actively discouraged from getting involved in media in any way.
Yeah.
And I left school with no qualifications, so ended up working in a kitchen, because where do you get a job when you don't have any qualifications?
What's funny is
in the 80s.
I grew up in a house where the TV was never off, but it was never viewed as a proper career. So
No, I think for many years my father's parents were disappointed with his career choice. Turned out all right for him there.
yeah, well, no, absolutely. I kind of what's the word? There was a great love of TV and a great love of comedy and stuff like that in the house, and but it was never considered a proper job. But as soon as I got into it, my parents were very pleased about it.
Yeah.
As soon as I started making money as a comic, they loved it. And
Well, as long as you're making money. Yeah, and like most parents, you were happy doing it.
yeah.
You know. But when did you start? When did you start feeling like it was a career? Because obviously, when you're starting out as comedy, you're learning your craft. Because any of the comics that I know, and we have a couple of mutual friends who do that for a living as well. It's like, it's not an easy start.
No, and I remember throwing up before a gig and thinking, I can't do this for a living. I can't be this nervous before I go to work every time. But those nerves do subside, and when you're starting out in comedy, you have your most difficult gigs right at the time in your career when you are at your worst.
Yeah.
Like you get better as you go on, and then as you get better, the gigs you do become easier. Like, I don't have to do gigs now where the audience haven't paid to get in and they don't even know there's a comedy night on, and somebody just stands up with a microphone and the audience go, because you've interrupted their conversation. I had to do loads of gigs like that early on,
But
right when I only had 10 minutes of material.
Because I think it's John Bishop talks about you need to do about 1,000 gigs like that to be any good.
Well, I don't know that I haven't
actually a
come
couple
through
of
that
years.
way. Yeah, I don't know that I subscribed to that idea that you have to be forged in that crucible. I know our generation we had to deal with stag nights and this, that, and the other. Now that a while ago, there a lot of comedy clubs sort of formed that were far more nurturing, out of which a more sort of alternative and more artsy kind of comedy scene came from. And it's a good thing, because you don't want every comedian to have this gladiatorial, balls aggressive kind of style of comedy. So one can be good in different ways. But yeah, we had a real kind of battle-hardened sort of start. The first time I felt like it was a real job is a curious thing. I remember I wasn't doing it that long. I still wasn't quite making a living. I think I was still on housing benefit, and I was off the dole. And I was going out to do a gig nearby, and I just felt a little bit under the weather, and I didn't quite feel like going out. And it was the first time that it felt like a job. And I got a real kick out of it. It's a really weird thing. I was sort of like, it was the first time I ever went to a comedy club not feeling like a sense of excitement. Oh, here we go, magic time. I was just like, I gotta go to work. And it was the first, and it actually really lifted me. Like, oh wow, this is my job. This is what I do. And I quite liked that.
But fast forward sort of to 98, and you won the Perrier.
I got nominated.
You got nominated
Yeah.
for the Perrier, which means that you probably should have spent some more time in Navan.
Yeah,
If
it
you
would
spent
have.
more time in Navas on as a child,
Yeah.
you would have
Might have
won it.
Might have won. But because it was won that year by Tommy Tiernan, who grew up in Navan. Didn't just spend 3 months there.
But then, the following year, you're doing the Royal Variety performance and that kind of thing. And then it dried up.
Yeah, I'd say around about, I did a bad sitcom in 2000. Myself and Davina McCall did a sitcom together. I was a Western flatmate. It was called Sam's Game.
I've got to be honest, I don't remember that.
No.
Anyone else remember that?
No one remembers it.
No.
It was, me, her, Tamika Epsom, who was in EastEnders.
Yep.
And Tristan Gamble. And it was, I was the wacky flatmate to Davina. It went out against the second series of Big Brother.
Right.
So I think
Which
that
was
was
quite
ITV.
popular.
Pretty popular.
I mean, if you went out against Big Brother now, you'd be quite pleased.
They obviously went, what's our secret weapon? ITV said, what is it that's drawing people to Big Brother? It's Davina McCall. So we'll do a show with Davina McCall in it that goes out at the same time as Big Brother, and it'll split Dennis thing. So that didn't do it. And then the following year, I did a sitcom in Ireland called The Cassidys, which is kind of an ensemble thing, and that died on its arse as well. And then I just sort of lost my new comedian smell. When you first on the scene and that, there's a bit of interest in you anyway. And so the phone kind of just stopped ringing from around sort of 02, 03.
And you went back to gardening.
No, I did not go back.
Did you go back to gardening?
No, God, I still made a living.
Yeah.
I do in all kinds. I was in corporates and troupe shows, and I was still touring, but it wasn't, I just wasn't being asked to do stuff on telly.
Because it's interesting. A very good friend of mine is a successful producer in the comedy thing, and he was saying that sort of system that you did Edinburgh, you either got nominated or you won, and then the BBC or one of the major broadcasters would come around you and develop stuff with you, and you either get a career or you wouldn't off the back of it. So that's gone now. They don't do that.
Yeah, that system is away. Yeah,
and as a result,
I mean, to be fair, the idea of them developing a show around you is still very much a thing they do in America.
Yeah.
In Britain, they kind of go, "What do you want to do?" Well, you make that. We'll try and help, but you still have to kind of. In America, they'll have teams of writers that go, "Okay, what do you see yourself as? Car mechanic. That sounds great," and they'll just build a sitcom around you. They'll get a pilot, stuff like that, and it can be, and that's where you'll often see in the credits of an American sitcom, it'll say, based on the stand-up comedy of whoever the person is. But over here, it would still very much be, you'd be expected to write it, Nobody wrote The Office for Ricky Gervais, you know what I mean? So we don't have the talent pool where we go, let's take this person and build a show around.
Well, we just don't spend as much money on it. And now, it appears they don't spend anything at all.
You really.
So you sort of, do you worry for the next sort of stage of comedy? Like, where are these people coming from? How do they get, because what changes it for comics really in terms of ticket sales is TV exposure.
It used to be, but now the online is where it's at. And there's loads of people who are doing far better than I.
Yeah.
Who, interestingly, like my parents wouldn't have heard of.
Yeah.
Who are filling places, Yeah. Like my folks, if I wasn't a comedian, say, my folks wouldn't know who Daniel Sloss is, as a for instance. And, he didn't so much come up online, but he funny enough, he sort of came via the States, really. He was never massive here.
Yeah.
He did a bunch of Conan O'Brien appearances, got on Netflix, But he built himself through doing stand-up, but not doing it on TV here. Yet he'll do, I think, a run of the Apollo or the Palladium. He's massive.
Yeah.
And then you got people like Four Alarms and Hog and stuff like that. Who just completely built it via, I think they mainly are Instagram or TikTok.
But it was that thing of like, the traditional thing was, like I say, you did Edinburgh.
Yeah.
You got a break on TV.
And
then you kind of had a tour. Then you had a tour, and if that works, then you could kind of keep going.
And if you got a few good tours under your belt, you could retire. And people used to do that. No one retires anymore.
No. I mean, well, our mutual friend should retire, but he keeps going.
I think Lee Evans Lee Evans is the last comic to retire for non-medical grounds. Lee Evans just went. He'd made enough money, and he just gone. His manager passed away, and I think his manager was the one who was keeping him going. And once he was gone, and I think he's the only one. Everybody even the ones who you would think, like our mutual friend Jimmy Carr, who you would think has enough money. Everyone just wants to keep
Definitely
going.
has enough money.
Because if I had enough money, I would retire.
He's even paid the tax man back.
Yeah.
That's how much money he's got. But so would you not? Because I mean, you what are you on tour 14 now?
Something like that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you didn't have to do it, would you not?
Oh, I would still do it, but I would very much like to not have to do it. But I think even if I didn't have to do it, I'd do it at least for fun. But I wouldn't do. I mean, the tours I do now, they're like 2 years long.
Yeah.
And
And then obviously there's the writing and honing of the material within that tour.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the hardest part for you? Is it coming up with the tour, or the show?
Yeah.
Or actually touring it?
And if you'd asked me this a couple of years ago, I would always say every time, writing the show is the hard part, and then performing it is the reward you get for the writing of it. So B.B. King always used to say, "I play for free, you pay me to travel," which is there's a lot of truth in that. So the time I'm spending on stage, I quite enjoy. You're not really paying for that. You're paying for all the gigs I did for no money when I was learning how to be a comedian. You're paying for the time I spent writing the show you're seeing, and you're paying for the amount of time I spent sitting on a motorway and sitting in
the 10 years it took you to be an overnight success.
Yeah, exactly. But also just getting there physically that night, and the fact that I didn't see my kids that day. That's the stuff that you're paying for, and the actual time on stage is. I actually quite enjoy that myself. This show that I'm touring at the moment, the show itself, the performer takes a bit more effort on my part than previous shows because it's quite an emotional
Tragedy
show.
plus time.
Yeah.
Which is a Mark Twain?
It's attributed to Mark Twain. It's actually, I think it's American humorist called Steve Allen, I think, came out with it in the late 60s.
So how did Mark Twain pick it up?
Mark Twain is one of those people like Tommy Cooper. If people don't know where the line came from, they say it was him. In the States, it's Mark Twain. In the UK, it's Tommy Cooper.
I mean, talking to people like Tommy Cooper, who were your comedy heroes growing up?
Dave Allen.
Yeah.
Would be one. Billy Connolly, obviously. Jasper Carrott.
Yeah.
He had his own show. And one that a lot of people and one that a lot of people don't seem to remember was Mike Harding.
Yeah.
He had a show on the BBC. I mean, he might have only had one series, but it was just when I was at an age where I was an absolute comedy sponge.
Him and his guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was similar to Billy Connolly and Jasper Carrott. Like the three of them all came from the folk circuit.
But it was the Dave Allen storytelling.
Yeah.
That kind of ability to weave a thing, which is something Ronnie Corbett had as well.
Yeah.
And I remember being at a thing, and it was some kind of event that Dad had put together for the Island Fund of Great Britain. And he'd invited lots of people, and everybody who came and did a little turn on stage. And there were lots of the sort of top comics of the time. But the one who brought the house down was Ronnie Corbett. He stood up, he did 20 minutes, and you were crying with laughter for those 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And that thing of that ability is honed by endless performances. So going back to that kind of John Bishop theory of 1,000 terrible, difficult gigs.
Yeah.
That's something you've garnered, that ability. And it is that thing where you stand on stage, you tell a joke, and it doesn't work, and you work out why it doesn't work, as opposed to just ploughing on.
Yeah, but what's really weird as well is still how minute a change can make a joke work or not work.
Yeah.
Just a tiny little thing. I had one in my last show, and it worked great. And I was talking about like what skills I developed over the years and how none of them are, particularly useful. But that one that I'm most pleased with is that since I'd hit my 40s, I'd finally developed the ability that I could recognize when a cramp was going to happen and stop it before it did. And I was very pleased with that as a kid. And I used to joke, and it always got a laugh, and then it stopped getting a laugh. I couldn't figure out why. And then I sort of went back to my notes, and I went back to an early recording, because somebody would tape the shows early on. And I'd stopped using the word recognize, and changed it to I could tell when a cramp was happening. And it just stopped working.
the word recognize.
And it was so weird that it didn't even occur to me that I was doing anything different.
Yeah.
But the joke is, all it was the difference between the word tell and the word recognize. And as soon as I switched it back, the joke worked again. Now that, I still, having been doing this 30 years, don't understand why that's the case.
Now, we've got to that time in proceedings where I'm going to have to ask you to don the spooning blindfold,
Right, you go.
courtesy of our friends at Smug. And I'm just going to move this stuff out of the way, because it is...
I nearly put that over me glass.
Yeah, well, that, like a challenge. Let me just move some of this stuff out of the way. But let's kick off with this one first.
Right.
I'm going to pop that down in front of you. I will feed you.
Okay.
This
is very salty.
Yes. But here we go. It's quite a big mouthful.
Okay.
But open wide. There we go. Tell me about the flavors, the textures. What are you getting there?
Okay, that's meaty.
It is meaty. It's definitely meaty, that one. What have I done for you there? Is it enjoyable
It's
first?
very spicy.
Yep.
Yeah. That's overall good.
Is it like pulled pork?
Well, no, it's not pork. It's
Is it beef now?
it is beef. It is beef.
But
It's been on my smoker for a long time.
it's very tender.
But that is my Chipotle brisket.
Well,
That did 12 hours on my smoker for you. How are we feeling? As a fellow Q expert, how are we feeling about what I've done there? You can take the blindfold off.
oh, I get it. Of course I can. Yeah.
No, sit
No, that's
blind.
very good. That was high quality. Yeah. And has a nice little kick as well, the Chipotle.
Yeah.
No, that was delicious.
Because, well, I finished the outside with a habanero chili jam, just to give it a bit of sweetness through it at the end, which I think works. But that thing of just putting that whole brisket on there, and just letting it happen is a delight. I would recommend that if you have the space and the means, get yourself a smoker.
Yeah. It's also, it's getting a brisket that's good. I think what British people think of as a brisket compared to what Americans think of as a brisket is two very...
Well, a brisket is rolled here.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not. It's the whole flat thing, and you trim the right amount of fat off it and get it all
You have to
correct.
specify a packer cut
Yeah.
to the butcher. Mm-hmm. We luckily, my father-in-law is a beef and sheep farmer.
Is he?
In Derbyshire. So we buy our beef by the cow. And
Well.
we'll often, there's a...
I mean, one of the nice things about living where I do, I buy my lamb whole or half.
Yeah.
Now, off a local farmer.
Yeah.
Haven't quite got to the whole cow.
We won't put a whole cow in our freezer, but we've got like 3 or 4 families who are from, school dads and stuff like that who go, "We're getting a cow, are you in?" And they'll go, "Yeah." And there was a while there where my wife was basically knocking out boxes of meat in the school car park, like something a
I've got something
dodgy
in the
trader,
bin, yeah.
or like somebody disposing of a body.
I mean, she could have got prosecuted for that, because I mean, was the vehicle refrigerated?
We weren't retailing. It does come down in a refrigerated van now because more people have gotten.
But the quality of that is so different, and I think that thing of there's that move towards eating more vegetables and that kind of thing. It's like meat should be a treat. It shouldn't be something that is mass produced and crappy, because it's just not good for you. I kind of have that thing of like, support your local butcher. Mm-hmm. If you're excuse the terminology, if your meat is wrapped in plastic, perhaps you shouldn't put it in your mouth. Yeah. because it's been mass produced and it's not good for anyone. It's not good for the animal. It's not because when that animal is put in that plastic packet, it's not lived for more than 24 months.
Right.
Because it's not financially viable for a farmer to keep a cow any longer than that. And that's why that thing of people now eating retired dairy cows, that meat tastes incredible.
Does it? I always assumed that it is stringy and not great, because they often just put down dairy cows, don't they?
Yeah, no, and you should eat retired dairy cows.
Oh, I was not saying you shouldn't, but I thought they just used it for dog food.
Well, yeah. I mean, lucky dogs, because if that has been a well cared for dairy cow, then it will eat fantastically. I mean, we might be offending certain people by talking about eating animals now, but I am going to take you to your second spoon now. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind donning the blindfold again. Take the glasses off. Take the glasses off. I'm going to bring this one in now. Here we go. It's your final spoon. I will again be feeding you. But here we go. Open wide. Little bit wider. There. that didn't go so well. What have we got there? No, he doesn't like that at all. Would you like to spit, sir?
Have peas, isn't it?
That is peas. That is peas. Now look, I thought I did a phenomenal job of disguising those.
No.
I put roasted garlic, roasted chili.
I'm loving it.
Pureed them.
Did
You
puree
really
all of
do
them?
hate peas.
I really hate peas. Wow. And maybe part of me just knew you were going to do it. Knew you were going to try and make
You knew the
peas.
second spoon would be awful.
I have tried
I mean,
to
that is a family favourite in my house.
Yeah.
And when I was cooking this, my wife was like, "What do you mean he doesn't like peas?
That's what my wife says. What do you mean you don't like peas? I don't like
What
them.
has a pea ever done to you?"
I think they're disgusting.
But
And I think that mushing them up makes them even worse. The mushy peas.
you should have left them whole.
Do you know what? Okay, because I will agree I am weird on this, because I like mange too.
Right. Which
French
is a sort of
beans,
pea.
things like that. Exactly. When they're in a pod.
What about
they're running-
edamame? Do you like
Nah.
it?
No,
Too
not
pea-like. Too pea-like.
And I did a TV show. I did the celebrity version of Britain's Best Home Cook.
Yeah.
And we have to do a dish made of peas, and I just don't even know how to cook them really. And I remember Claudia Winkleman saying, "Come on, are you falling in love with the pea yet? If this was a romantic comedy, where you and the peas, have you fallen in love yet? If this is a romantic comedy, we're still in the early stages. The peas are still trying to shut down my bookshop.
Because you know who you share a hatred of peas with?
Every well-meaning and good-thinking person on the
Well,
planet.
no, I mean, not necessarily. I mean, Marcus Waring.
Right?
I just don't get it. Because the whole premise of this show is there's no such thing as a bad ingredient. You've just had it cooked badly for you. So outside of a allergy or a religious belief, and in some cases a phobia, which is quite obviously what I've delved into here with you, is that it just. But I mean, even the flavors of that are so nice. Is it a
Garlic
texture
flavors,
of the,
but no, first of all, we have to. They're cold, which is probably not how
They
they're
were
designed
warm.
to
They
be.
were warm earlier, but
waffled on a
we've
little bit
talked a
much,
little bit
perhaps.
too much, man.
So that doesn't help. But I think peas have a very strong flavor. If they didn't, you wouldn't make pea soup, for instance.
No,
You know.
which I like.
I'm sure you do.
But I mean,
Which I do
so
not.
even when it's the flavour. It's not the
It is also the texture. I don't like anything about peas, and what I hate about them, along with sweet corn, is the way they show up
Sweet
uninvited.
corn.
So you'll buy a beef curry from a Chinese takeaway, and there'll be peas in it. And I'll take that beef curry home, and I will spend 5 minutes picking the peas out of that beef, because I did not.
Much to your
trust that.
wife's consternation.
Much to whoever's watching me do it. You know I'm hungry if I don't pick the peas out of something before I eat it. And sweet corn is the same. You buy a tuna fish sandwich and there's sweet corn in it. Or cucumber. That's another one that shows up uninvited.
Now, cucumber, I take it. If it's not treated right, cucumber is an awful addition to something. But if it is right, it's a fantastic addition.
I remember just being in like a forest park, some national park, and there was a food trolley, like a food truck, and I bought a sandwich and it was lovely. And then they had these dime bar cake. It was obviously homemade. And I love a dime bar, love cake. Bought a dime bar cake, got in the car, was eating it, and clearly it had been stored in a fridge next to cucumber, and it just tasted of cucumber. And it was probably the greatest food disappointment of my life.
Oh, damn.
Because cucumber has an incredibly strong flavour.
Yes.
That even when you pull cucumber slices out of your tuna fish sandwich,
It'll still.
But
But you see, I would never thank you for a tuna sweet corn sandwich. I don't think, or as much as that is a fantastic combination to many, I don't want it.
No.
It's kind of, for me, it's a bit lazy.
Right.
But
It's bulking it out.
But is it with sweet corn, which I also love and don't understand why you hate? Is it again a textural thing or the flavour thing?
Yeah, again, it must be, I think it's a textural thing. It's like,
So
you
you wouldn't enjoy a cornbread which has a similar.
Yeah, I could eat a
flavour.
cornbread, yeah. And I
mean,
grew
here
up on cornflakes.
Here we have a very popular.
And popcorn.
Yeah, but here we have a very popular pizza, which is our sweet corn and chorizo pizza.
No.
You wouldn't have that.
I wouldn't like the sweet corn on that. Okay. Yeah. And it's a thing I'm jealous of. Like, I watch people eat
Corn on the
corn
cob.
on the cob.
No?
And I go, that looks lovely, dripping with butter and all that.
That on the smoker with a little miso butter.
Yeah, I bet.
Oh, so then as you serve it, squeeze a fresh lime over the top.
And it's another one of those ones as well. I quite like the idea of growing corn and growing different ones and old ones, ones with all different colours of grain.
You just don't know how to eat it.
I just don't want to eat it, yeah.
Well,
Does that feel like a failure to you now?
yes, it does. I always feel like I've let my guests down. If
You
I
can't
don't
just
change.
accept that that I just literally don't like the taste of
Well,
beef.
no, I think we've discovered that. I like to challenge perceptions, but when I fail, I do feel like I failed. But it has been fantastic to have you as a guest today. Your tour goes on till 4th of April.
Yeah.
And you've got
And then I'll be
endless-
recording it sometime in May. I'm
yeah,
recording the show.
endless
Yeah.
dates, and you're here and in Europe as well. So best of luck with the tour.
Thank you, Mark.
And thank you very much for taking part.
No, not at all.
And I'm
so
sorry
really sorry.
I'm
about
sorry
the
you
beef, but
didn't-
hey, kudos on the beef.
Well,
of
you
course.
can get rid of the taste. You can have that second spoon there. But that is all for this week, and thank you to Ed for taking part. I will, of course, be joined next week by another very special guest. Until then, you can find us anywhere you like on social media by just searching Spooning with Mark Wogan. And of course, this is available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Until next week, stay beautiful.